Okay, well, I've transferred over the drawing onto the panel, and now we're going to begin the priming stage. Basically, I have on my palette white and black gesso. I'm going to mix probably 3 or 4 steps in between and create basically a black and white version of the painting. Okay, well, I set up my 5 values over here. I never use pure white or pure black because then it's almost impossible for the paint to cover over it. So I'm going to start by using the lightest value and filling in the sky. And I'll probably have it maybe go from like slightly darker and fade into lighter. And I start moving into that first value that I had. Start trying to blend them a little bit. I think I may have made this a little too dark, so I may end up having to use much more white in here. From here, what I'm doing is I'm mixing in the straight white into my that first value. And also, to help it flow a little better, I'm using acrylic flow release. It's basically like a thinner, but it's not water, because water destroys the adhesive that's in the paint, the binding agent. Anyway, you get the idea. Okay, well, I managed to get a fairly light and even sky tone, so now we're going to start working on the body of the plane. I want the sun to be coming from here, not perfectly up and down, but maybe just a little bit, maybe like a 15 or 20 degree angle. And for this area, I used probably the darkest tone of the primer.
Here. The air intake. Take the next white shade. Put it in here.
I think I'll probably use my first and second shades because this is going to be a red nose cone.
Still loaded with some darker stuff. That's okay.
Since it's a cylinder, I'm going to try to keep most of the highlight up here and have a secondary light wrapping around the bottom of the cone.
Same shade. Start in the middle and work my way out.
continuing to lay down primer for the graphic itself. It's a wet brush, that's why it's so runny right now. One thing to keep in mind is that if you're going to use like a gloss medium, it may look great to you, but if you're going to photograph the work, it's going to be kind of tough because you're going to have the reflections from the lights to deal with, and unless you have a photographer that knows what they're doing, you're going to spend a whole lot of time in post-production trying to work those out. And since I'm left-handed, I have to always work from right to left, or else I run the risk of smudging. Yeah, see? I guess it's also one of the reasons why I never really liked oils. It just, it takes months for them to dry. So I was always leaving behind this cloud, wherever I worked. Now I'm going to begin priming the figure. Since she has fairly light skin compared to the plane, I'm going to be sticking with basically like the top two values that I mixed up. Maybe the third, or yeah, probably the third for the hair. Looks like this brush got contaminated with some of the darker stuff. I'm already off to a kind of rough start. On these broad areas, I want to keep the strokes from being so pointillized like that, where they're real small and stuttered, because it starts to create kind of a pockmarked pattern. I try not to let the paint sit too long, because once it starts to dry, it starts to create a little film. If you go over it again, you'll start to create these little jagged strokes. Well, I finished the priming. I didn't record the rest of it as I went through and did the body. It was just taking way too long, so I decided to just plow ahead. And for the most part, it turned out okay. I'm happy that the shadow turned out all right. I mean, I guess I could make it wrap around the exhaust pipes over here. But other than that, this piece should be ready for color. I just need to send a picture off to the client, make sure everything is the way he wants it. And then once I get the okay, I'll start laying down color.